Well, hello. I hope you are off to a good Tuesday today. My name is Paul Fowler. I'm our Lake Forest campus pastor, and I've been sharing our devotions this week from Daniel chapter 4 and 5. And we've been talking about how God is the Most High God. Yesterday, we talked about how it might look like in this world where there is chaos with politics and those that are in power, that we still have to understand that God is the Most High God, that He is sovereign over all things. And He used a king, King Nebuchadnezzar, to tell us that in His word in Daniel chapter 4. Today, we're going to be talking again about how God is the Most High God. There's a street artist called Revel. Maybe you heard of this one. There's many different others that kind of create this style of artwork. I encourage you to Google Revel, take a look at his work. But what he does is this fascinating style of art where he takes a canvas, and you watch it on stage, he does this in a few minutes, and he starts painting these lines and these squiggles on it. And it doesn't seem to make sense if you've never seen this type of artwork before. And so over a couple minutes, he's painting these lines and these squiggles and things, and he takes the canvas and he turns it around, flips it upside down, and what you realize is it's actually a celebrity, a famous person that somehow he's found a way to do it upside down that we don't understand it when it's upside down, but when he flips it up, it changes our perspective. It helps us lock in on what he's trying to show us. I think this is helpful in our life when we don't have the right perspective about how God is the Most High God. Sometimes when we're going through the difficulties and problems of our own personal life, that we have a hard time with our limited perspective to see exactly what God is doing in that situation. As we think about what's happening in Daniel chapter 4 and 5, you think about the Israelites taken from the land that was the chosen land that they were supposed to be at, put into exile in a kingdom in a terrible place with King Nebuchadnezzar. You had to think that them reading the story of Daniel was just a terrible time for them, that perhaps they thought to themselves, is God the Most High God? Is He really powerful enough? Does He even care about our problems? And perhaps that's the same way we can feel today as we go through things. But what I want to show you today, actually from Jeremiah 27, is to try to zoom out and get a big picture of what exactly is happening here in Daniel chapter 4 and 5. Because what looks like something that is a tragic and difficult and kind of chaotic situation is actually something that God had been a part of from the beginning and had an excellent end that He was moving towards. If you look at Jeremiah 27 today, I'm going to read from verse 5 and 6 and 7. It says, "With my great power and outstretched arm, I made the earth and people and the animals that are on it, and I give it to anyone I please." It sounds familiar to Daniel chapter 4, verse 17 that we read yesterday, where God says He is the Most High God and He gives it to whoever He pleases. Jeremiah is saying the same thing 50, 60 years earlier, far away from where Daniel would be writing or King Nebuchadnezzar would be writing about how God is the Most High God. He gives it to who He wishes. Look at verse 6 as it continues. "Now I will hand all your countries over to my servant Nebuchadnezzar." This was all part of God's plan. This is not some chaotic thing. "I'll give it to Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and I will even make the wild animals subject to him." If you read about Nebuchadnezzar's dream in Daniel chapter 4, it talks about how he has this dream of this great tree and it grows and there's wild animals that are living on it, feeding it from it. Jeremiah and Daniel 4 are saying the same exact thing, thousands of miles apart, 50 years earlier in the time perspective there. This is God speaking in two different places, the same thing about what He's doing. It continues on in verse 7, "All nations will serve him and his son and his grandson until the time for his land comes. Then many nations and great kings will subjugate him." This is exactly what we're going to see in Daniel chapter 5 when Belshazzar is overthrown by the Persians. What's so fascinating about this is that we see in Jeremiah, we see in Daniel, and we'll actually see this in Ezra and Nehemiah, that God had a perfect plan, because He's the Most High God, that involved taking the people of Israel out of their land, giving them over to King Nebuchadnezzar. This wasn't some cosmic accident that God somehow was not powerful enough. This was actually part of God's plan. And what's so amazing about it is when it looks like things might be bleak and difficult for the people of Israel, at one time, the Persians will take over, and you know what happens? We'll see in the book of Ezra, if you read it there as well. Cyrus is actually going to help them build the temple. He's going to give them back the gold elements. And later what would come would be Jesus Christ in the nation of Israel. You see, it's easy to look at our problems and the things that are happening today with our limited perspective and perhaps say to ourselves, God's not powerful enough. God's not there. He doesn't know what's going on. But what we can see here when we zoom out and when we get the big picture, or perhaps like the artist Revel, when we can flip the canvas upside down, it brings into that perspective that the Most High God has a perfect plan that He's working it out. So no matter what you're going through today, I know it's hard to get that big perspective of what God is doing. It's easy to think that the Most High God is not with us, that He's not for us, that He's not going to help us. And although that might not change today's situation, that you have a bigger view that God is the Most High God, you have to understand that He is there, that He is with you. You know, when you watch this artist do these photos, when you've seen it one time, you've seen it all. You can see it upside down. You know he's going to flip the canvas. But when it comes to God, and we realize that He is the Most High God, can we not go into our problems saying, hey, I bet God's going to be at work. And at one point, maybe down the road, maybe next week, maybe 2 years from now, He's going to flip the canvas. And I'm going to gain that perspective that He is the Most High God over all our problems. I hope you get that time today to consider and pray that God would show you where the Most High God is involved in your problems, no matter what you're going through today. Have a good day. Hope to see you tomorrow.